Hey guys, what's up? Hope you guys had a good holiday season and a happy New Year's and celebrated it. Mine went pretty well. It wasn't bad at all. Spent time with the family. The usual gift giving stuff. My New Year's was pretty quiet and just spend it with family and just it was nice and pleasant. He's hoping that this new year of 2011 goes a hell of a lot better than 2010 because too much of 2010 sucked for a whole lot of people. I mean, it had its ups and downs. For me, it really sucked in the beginning, and it got better toward the end. So whatever. But enough of that. I got a story to tell, and this is a true story. This happened recently as yesterday. See, I was dropping somebody off at the train station. They were on their way back home, and they needed to take the Amtrak back to where they were going. And I was dropping them off. And while we got there and we're getting everything ready, and they ran into the information booth, to make sure they had all their paperwork in order and all that before they ran to the gate to get on the train, I noticed that there was this young woman, barely, just barely a young woman, like almost a girl, just sitting in the corner of that office. And she was sitting there. She looked kind of dejected. And as we're getting everything in order and getting his tickets ready, so get there, she gets up and she asks us if we were heading to a particular town. And I told her that no. For one thing, it's only that dude who was jumping on the train, and he was heading out to St. Louis. And me, I was on my way home. I was just dropping them off, making sure everything was okay. So she was like, "Oh," and sat back down dejectedly. And that's when I took a good look, because I realized that if anyone's asking us where we're going and they happen to be sitting in that ticket information office, it's usually because they're trying to get a ride. And that's when I noticed. Keep in mind, guys, especially if you happen to live where I live. I live in Chicago. The weather was fucking cold yesterday. Okay, everywhere was cold. Now imagine this is somebody who was wearing nothing but sweats, no coat, no shoes, holding a plastic bag which looked like just a few meager possessions. So I'm thinking at first maybe homeless and she's just trying to get her another ride, but then I took another look at her and I'm like, nah, she's not homeless. She didn't look dirty, and she didn't have that, I don't know, it's hard for me to describe, but there's that certain air of somebody who's homeless, and I'm not talking about dingy or insane. No, there's just a certain, it's hard for me to describe. Some of you guys may know what I'm talking about. Like, there's a certain ambiance of somebody who doesn't have a place to go, and this person had more of an ambiance of they have a place to go but they just can't get there. So by the time this guy had his tickets and everything settled, I'd already made up my mind that after I made sure he made it to his gate, I was going to go back and make sure I can buy her ticket. I had the extra money. It wasn't going to be a big deal. So after the dude got on the train, I went back and I told her everything was okay, and I turned to her and said, "Okay, do you need a ticket where you're going? Because I can buy your ticket." And I was thinking, it's not going to cost much, like maybe $70, $80 at the most to get on Amtrak, depending on where she's going. And it was much cheaper than that. It was going to be something like $34, and I definitely had that. The only problem was she wouldn't have been able to get the ticket anyway, because that's when I found out she had nothing. She had none of her stuff. She had, remember I told you she had no shoes, no coat. She also had no wallet. Her ID was gone. Her cell phone was gone. Here's where it gets interesting. Turns out that she was a college student from a town at least a little over 2 hours away from where I lived, and they had come over to Chicago for the New Year's. They were there to celebrate and hang out and have fun New Year's at some party somewhere. And while she was there, as young dumb college students tend to do in party situations, they imbibe things that maybe they shouldn't be imbibing. And she happened to have been smoking something that some people have problems with, but most people these days seem to not have a problem with. But it turned out to be laced with something. She said suddenly she started getting dizzy, everything started getting fuzzy, and the next thing she knew, she woke up in the hospital. She vaguely remembers being brought there in an ambulance, but that memory is fuzzy as well. And when she woke up in the hospital, her stuff was gone. The reason why her shoes was gone, because while she was there at that party, she had taken her shoes off to get more comfortable. Well, no one had bothered to put their shoes back on her feet when she apparently fell. I'm assuming that she must have fallen, because I mean, if you don't remember what happened, maybe you stumbled, fell unconscious or something, and the next thing you know, yeah. She woke up at the hospital, her shit gone, her friends nowhere to be seen, and she doesn't know how the hell to get back. She doesn't have her cell phone because it was with her stuff. She can't call her friends to call, where the hell are you? Can't you pick me up? Nothing. So yeah, she was fucked. Completely. And without an ID, there was nothing I could do as far as buying her a ticket. She couldn't go on Greyhound. She couldn't get on Amtrak. Nothing. So I was thinking to myself, you know, it's early in the day. I don't have to go to work until 11. I can drive her. So I told her, look, as long as you don't feel weird driving in a strange guy's car, I can get you there. I know where your town is. I've driven there several times before. It's just like a little over 2 hours. Jump in the car. I'll bring you there so you don't got to worry about being stranded here. Because she had to get back. I mean, she lives in like a 2-hour away town, no way to get back in the middle of winter with not even a fucking coat or shoes. No, fuck that shit. Look, I can get you there. So, of course, she accepted. Well, I shouldn't say of course. Some people would be like, who the hell is this weird black dreadlock motherfucker? But she was desperate. I could you look in her eyes and she was desperate. And I then, to reassure her, I was like, look, I'm not some crazy psycho axe murderer. You know, there's witnesses here. I can leave my name and information or whatever just in case, you know, somebody's going to wonder if she disappears. Hey, I remember he was with this guy. She was like, nah, we don't need to do any of that. I trust you. So, long story short, we got back, told my wife, because she'd have to know, got back to my house because she said that if she can get online, she'd be able to look up the numbers and call her friends and find out what the hell happened. So, drove back here, got my wife up. She wanted to come along, and then we all had this one grand road trip adventure. We did get her back there. Long story short, she got back. She was very grateful, very happy. It was a bad situation. I hope she learned her lesson because, you know, she was mad young, 20 years old, and I could tell this is not an experience she probably ever wants to repeat again. Now, the reason why I'm telling this story, not because it was, well, one thing, it's a hell of a story to tell. I mean, this was not how I expected to spend my New Year's Day. I thought I was just going to relax and then go to work. And it turns out I ended up having to drive somebody back, you know, to where they were at so that they wouldn't be stuck in the big, bad, old, cold-ass city. But the reason why I'm telling this story is not, I mean, part of it is to tell the story because it's a hell of a story. It's not also to toot my own horn or anything like that, because quite frankly, I believe that this is something that everybody should do. You know, some people are, oh man, you're such a good guy for doing that, because I've gotten several of those when people were asking me, where the hell were you? We thought you were going to be home. And I told them, they're like, wow. It's like, we're social animals. We're human beings, okay? This is the type of shit we're supposed to do. And I know some people are going to be going, what do you mean supposed to do? I'm not talking about ethics or morality here. We are social animals living in a social group that we like to call a society. The reason why human beings come together as a society is to benefit us as far as safety and security goes. This is why we join societies. If you're the type of person who doesn't want to take advantage of such things, or you reject the notion of having human help from other people, then don't live in a society. But as social animals, that's why we come together in groups or travel in groups. And if one person is ailing, the rest of the group helps them along. This is what we fucking do. And for those of you guys, because I know if you talk to the average person, they're like, yeah, that's right, we should be doing more of that. No, you don't fucking believe that. Please, don't. No. Because one, if people believe that, I wouldn't be hearing, oh, you're such a good person for doing what I did. It would just be, yeah, that's what you do. And second, I got 2 words for anybody who's trying to tell me, oh, yeah, I believe in everyone helping each other out. Universal health care. Yeah, see, yeah, that's all I have to say. But the main reason why I'm telling this story is because of the conversation that my wife and I had on our way back home, which I thought would be quite relevant to this. It's something my wife had thought of. So I love my wife. She's really intelligent, and she comes up with really interesting things to talk about from any situation. We're on our way home, and she's sort of shaking her head. First, she was talking about how, you know, she hopes the girl learns from this situation because it's a really effed up situation to be in. And then she was also talking about how this is a hell of a thing for somebody to go through. I mean, she says that, yeah, people make mistakes, but this is a hell of a thing to have to suffer through. for making a simple mistake. I mean, next thing she knows, she wakes up in a hospital. She got hit with bad drugs, and then you don't even know how to get back to where you live. And that's some scary shit. But then she brought up something really, really interesting. She said, "I bet you anything that if you were dealing with a religious person, they would try to come up with some cockamamie shit about how, oh, this is what you get, and this might be divine punishment or cosmic punishment." And that, it was fated, for doing these bad things, you're doing immoral things, a good, religious person, you wouldn't do these things, and that's why that happened to you. That was God's way of punishing you for what happened. And I've heard that, for so many other people's mishaps, We hear it all the time. Oh, Richard Pryor even made a joke about it once after he had set himself on fire, and later on people were telling him, God was punishing you. He had a funny answer to that, but I'm not going to repeat it here. If you want to find out, go and check out that comedy act. It's a classic. You hear this a lot, people get in trouble either through their own mistakes, well, usually through their own mistakes or some type of mishaps, and then later on they'll put up some bullshit about God was punishing you. And I never really liked that, because one, people make mistakes all the time, and sometimes they're little mistakes, and some major consequence happens, and because somebody happens to be in some type of religiously dogmatic high horse, they want to start casting judgment on other people and then just use God's name to justify whatever bigoted opinions they may have, whatever prejudices they may have on how they think somebody should act. They'll then go, that you didn't do the way I thought you should act, so that was God's way of punishing you. Who the fuck are you to take your deity and then try to put your own morality system on that? But the other thing is that it's a rather stupid argument, especially if somebody helps them out of that jam. Think about, like, if somebody happens to be in a predicament because of certain choices they made, or even choices they didn't make. Shit just happens. And then somebody goes, God was punishing you for this. These are the consequences you have to suffer from. But if somebody comes along to help them out, doesn't that undermine your God's plan? We got to remember here, depending on what religion you're dealing with, which quite frankly is a hell of a lot of religions, particularly if you're dealing with the monotheistic ones, they believe their God is infallible and omnipotent and omniscient, and he knows everything that's going to happen, and he's powerful, and everything he said, once he puts something into motion, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. This is why many times people, whenever they want something to happen, and they pray for something, but they don't want to be too presumptuous to demand it, they go, well, if God wills it, it will happen. So basically they're just saying that, it's out of our hands. Whatever God wants to happen will happen. Okay. Now you're saying that God willed for this person to be punished. Let's take this girl that I had to drive back. For partying that night and smoking certain things, some people would possibly go, well, the fact that you got stranded and ended up in the hospital and you didn't know what to do, that was God's way of punishing you. Yeah, but then I came along. Okay? And I was able to get her home. The intended punishment was for her to be stranded and disoriented with no money and no way to get home. But I cut that short. I showed up and got her home. So basically, somehow, a meager, born from the dust mortal was able to undermine the plan of an almighty being who is in control of the entire universe. Does that make any fucking sense? No, it doesn't. Now, I'm pretty sure some other people would come along and try to say, oh no, it was God's plan to put you there to help that person out. Last time I checked, I didn't get any psychic messages from anyone saying there's going to be a girl inside that building and you need to drive her home. All I thought was that I was going to drop somebody off at that station so they can get on their train, and I was going to go home and get some sleep. I just happened to have been at the right place at the right time, and I knew when I saw her and knew her predicament that there was no way in hell that I would be able to sleep at night if I left that place without trying to help her. That's what mattered. Shit just happens. To try to put a value judgment on mishaps just goes to show how limited human thinking is. Things sometimes just happen. Consequences happen from certain actions we do, but consequences in and of themselves don't have a conscious energy behind it or a conscious motive behind it in terms of what happens to you after you do something. These are not divine punishments. It's just bad situations resulting from certain missteps. And sometimes not necessarily from missteps. Sometimes you try to do the good thing and you get fucked over. Is that divine punishment then? No, it's just shit that happens. So, yeah. That's what me and my wife were talking about on the way home about that predicament. And I just thought I'd share that with you guys to ring in the new year. Catch you guys later.